Welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and today we're talking lighting. And I changed the lighting in the basement. Yeah, pretty cool. I got the light off. I got a light up there shining on me. So hopefully it looks good on your end. It looks okay on my end. It looks about like normal. Um, so as we get going, people will start joining. So to begin with, in today's video, I want to talk about Reef Aquarium lighting. And then at the end, I'll go through and I'll answer as many questions as you guys want to throw out there. I'm kind of all about that, but while people come in, I'll start taking the time to talk about some of my lighting experiences, my thoughts on some of the older technologies, the current technology, and we'll go from there. So we've already got a couple people in. So hello, Click Clacks Reef. Hello, Mike Harvey and Click Clacks Reef. We are going to get going on lighting. So I started in this hobby in 2006. I know it doesn't really feel that long ago to me personally, but it really is a long time ago, at least when it comes to reef lighting technology. When I got started, we had two big technologies. That was metal halides and VHOs. Some of you out there are probably like, what are VHOs? VHOs are what we had before T5s and compact fluorescents. Yeah, these were the two established technologies. So metal halides, we all know they come in. Oh yeah, I got glue all over my hands because I was just gluing up a coral. What better thing for a reefer to have on their hands? Yeah, anyways, metal halides are basically a type of bulb. They are super bright. They're closer to an incandescent bulb than anything else. You can get single-ended or double-ended. So single-ended are like big bulbs that look like they screw into a standard light socket. And the double-ended are the ones with the two ends that slide up in. They're your metal halides. Super bright lights, put out tons and tons of light, like tons of power, crazy amounts. And this was the standard from the time that reef keeping started till, well, even today, a lot of people, price not being an issue, will go directly to metal halides because they just work. Lots of power, and then the spectrum can be absolutely amazing. People have their own bulbs. It's almost like a religion in the reef keeping hobby. Like when it comes to metal halide bulbs, they pick one, they stick with it. The radium bulbs, the 20K radiums are still super popular. People love them, and it's really a cool lighting system. But VHOs were usually paired with metal halides, and their VHO are your high output fluorescents. So old school, big fat fluorescent bulbs. Yeah, but we had ways of overdriving them, getting a lot more light out of them. And for a long time, you basically had a choice of some sort of light, of white and some actinic options. And then as time went on, all of that kind of grew. But what, in my opinion, was the first big game changer was T5s and compact fluorescents. Compact fluorescents were often paired with metal halides, and they were often ran on their own, but the bulbs were a little more expensive, a little harder to use. So that technology kind of went away, and we all ended up with those thin those thin T5 tubes. They look like the VHOs, just real thin. They're awesome. You get tons and tons of spectrum, like fantastic spectrum. And that's what people loved about this old lighting technology. You got a big reef tank, you buy a metal halide, you pair it with some T5s, you just put 20K, maybe you pick out some T5s that you like, and you're perfect. You're golden. It was plug and play, set and forget, and it worked fantastic. So why change? Well, LEDs came along, and LEDs have been a game changer for this hobby. I'm sorry, I'm seeing some of the comments. We will definitely get to those comments. So there's some funny stuff that they're talking about that I did earlier today. So if you follow me on Facebook, you probably already know that. Anyways, let's get back to T5s, metal halides, LEDs, all of that. Anyways, LEDs were a game changer in this hobby. They changed dramatically. The LEDs started off as kind of this fringe technology that people tried. They didn't know if it worked, so they kind of slowly eased their tanks onto it. But it turned out LEDs were where it's at. LEDs, tons and tons of par. If you want to design an LED light to have more par than a metal halide, you can absolutely do it. Spectrum-wise, yeah, you can. The bulbs, they run that full gamut of spectrum. They are amazing. They generally use less energy. They are controllable, so I can control the amount of light. I can control the spectrum. This was the game changer, if you ask me. The problem I think LEDs have posed to a lot of hobbyists, though, is you just don't know how to tune them. In the old days, it was really hard to screw up, right? I buy a metal halide bulb, I stick it up in there, pair it with the T5s, and the coral just grew. The colors were what you got. It just was what it was. There wasn't really changing. I mean, you could, but it was super expensive to do so. Metal halide bulbs, $50 a piece, and then you're probably 15 to 20 bucks a piece for T5 bulbs. So if you wanted to change your spectrum, you want to try to change the color of that acro, you want to change your spectrum on your lighting system, well, the only good way to do it was to change the bulbs, and it got so expensive by doing all of that. So I've been playing with some of this old tech on my reef tank along with the new LEDs, and I'm loving the results. So if you haven't really been following the channel much lately, I've got two metal halides. They're 250 watt double-ended bulbs on the tank with the with 4 bulbs of T5s, and I've got 3 Kessel A360Xs for my LEDs, and then I've got a couple of A160s on articulating mounts for spotlights. And this is working fantastic. So one of the big mistakes I think a lot of hobbyists make when they start talking about lighting is they're so worried about par. And, par is one of those things that early on I thought was going to be a huge deal. When I first got into this hobby, I bought a lux meter. Yeah, this was before you could just go buy a par meter. I bought a lux meter. Something like a contractor would use at a building to see how bright it was. But I bought a lux meter, and I would put it in the tank, and I would take measurements every 3 months or so. I did this because the old T5s and metal halides, they would lose brightness over time. So by doing that, I could kind of gauge how much lighting I had lost over time, so I would know when to replace my bulbs. It was a cool way to do it, but LEDs are better. They really don't lose that brightness over time. But what if we lost with the LEDs? Well, we lost a lot of fill. In the old days, you'd have the metal halides up there giving you that big, bright spotlight effect. And they could actually even give you the fill effect depending on how you set up the reflectors. But primarily, most people were using them for super bright spotlights. Now, a lot of people didn't just run metal halides on their own. A lot of tanks with just metal halides have a weird look to them. They're not quite blue enough, in my opinion. So you get the 20K bulbs, you put them on there. Even 20K sounds ridiculously blue. But those of us who live in 2020, we know what real blue looks like coming off of our LEDs. 20Ks are nowhere near that. So in the old days, we would pair that with actinics, and that's how we would get the brightness, but that in the color spread, but it also provided that fill. So those actinics gave us that fill, and it basically, it fills in all of those shadowy areas in the tank. And that really helps the coral grow, because it's not as much about par as you might think. As long as the coral gets enough par to meet those energy demands, it's probably going to be okay. Now, there's going to be this minimum amount of par that a coral needs to get all the way up to the max, and then there's going to be kind of this happy medium. As long as you're somewhere in there, it's fine. If you're on the low end, not a big deal. If you're on the high end, it's not a big deal. If you're on the high end, the coral might grow faster. It might have some different health characteristics. Maybe it changes colors. Maybe does some weird stuff. But on the other end, you keep it under lower light, it grows a little slower, but maybe you get a different color out of it. Lighting is one of those things that is going to mess with your heads. And in the old days, we kind of spread it out the best we can, and that's what we did. But LEDs came along, and it's one of those technologies I've absolutely loved. So when I first got the LEDs for my 210 gallon tank, I mixed them with the T5s. I love that look, and basically what I was doing was replicating close to what I was getting with my old metal halide system. The new A360Xs replaced those old metal halide bulbs, so I got that real bright punch, but then I got the fill from the T5s. What was really cool about the Kessels was that I could adjust the color. So I could run a bluer light if I wanted to. And the tank did really good. But I always kind of felt like maybe there's this slight room for improvement. So when I was cleaning out the basement and I found that old metal halide light, I tore it apart. I put the old metal halides up in there, and the metal halides actually made a huge difference. Now, midday, even though I'm running 20K bulbs, they're kind of blue, I do end up with what I consider to be a whiter tank. And this is just by 2020 standards based on the color of our LEDs. But modern LEDs are fantastic, but adding those 20K bulbs in there really has made a difference. The amount of par coming off of those two bulbs is huge. I don't have the par meter to measure it, but it's huge. I'm getting tons. This coral have really perked up. I mean, it's added spread because I've got two more lights there. So I'm loving that effect. I've got the T5s. And then I added the spotlights with the articulating mounts. And that's where I feel is going to be the next big thing for lighting. So we kind of talked about how all you really got to do is get for par anyways, is kind of get it to where we're meeting those minimum nutrition requirements and we're not overlighting it. As long as we're in that range, we're probably going to be okay. But we can't always get the light where we want it if we shoot straight down. By putting the Kessels or on those articulating mounts, I can aim the light and get the light exactly where I want it. Pieces of real estate that used to be black and shaded, I can now put coral in. It's amazing. Stuff that was overgrowing other stuff, instead of trimming it back, I'm able to light around it. And honestly, I think for people with really high-end, large reef tanks, this is what we're going to see as the big trend. It's not adding more lights for the sake of more light. It's adding more light for the sake of getting the light where you need it. Now, I say that this is going to be the trend for big tanks, but I also see the value of it in nano tanks. I've ran a couple of different lighting systems on my 24-gallon Nano over the years. It's a JBJ. It came with the hood, and it had the compact fluorescent light bulb in it. It was fine. It had a nice color to it, but I want to put the skimmer on the back, so I took the hood off. And then I put a metal halide on there. It was great, but it was too white. I had a 20K metal halide on there, and it was too white. I mean, it was like a beam of sunlight coming straight down on the tank, which is what you think, well, that's probably what we want. But watch a diver's video of a coral reef. The corals on a coral reef are very brown. They're getting spectrum to make them really happy. They're getting spectrum to make them really healthy. But they aren't getting spectrum to get those crazy colors that we as hobbyists really want to see. So on a nano tank, on my nano tank, I upgraded from the metal halide to a Kessel A160. Great light, did fantastic. Loved that light, nice pendant style on the arm. Absolutely nothing bad to say about it. I love the Kessels because you can just turn the blue. It mixes it with the whites perfectly. Unless you do something real dumb, you're not going to overlight your corals. You're not going to throw the colors off too much. They work fantastic. But when I added the new light on there, oh man, this is embarrassing because I'm live. My brain slipped. But it's, wow, this is super embarrassing. Anyways, when I add the new light, it's I'll think of it. But it's got two pendants on there. So you got the two light bulbs on there shooting light down. So now I've got light coming from either side, and I'm getting a bit more fill than I did with the Kessel. I can run the light a little closer if I want to, or I can lift it up higher, but I'm getting more fill because I've got the two bulbs on there, which is way cool. So that has made a big difference in that tank. I absolutely love that light. I crank it high. Now, the 24-gallon Nano I run a little bit different because I can. For a long time, my 210-gallon Reef, I've always kept kind of medium lighting. I'm not an acro guy. I don't put tons of acros in my tank. So I run kind of medium level lighting. So I took the opportunity, because I can, to turn the 24-gallon into a high light tank. So when I put the Akamai on the tank, and yes, I remembered the name. I don't know why my brain slips. It does that. Anyways, when I put the Akamai on the tank, I said, you know what? We're going to make this high light. We're going to work the coral around the tank. This is a bit of a luxury I personally have because I got another tank. I can throw corals in the low light tank if I'm having lighting issues. It's fantastic. But I'm doing a highlight tank. So Zoas are loving it. My softies are loving it. SPS loves it. LPS, not so much. So that's kind of one of those other weird things that's come with lighting, is the differences you're going to see in the coral themselves. Some corals love highlight, others do not. LPS are notorious for not loving highlight, like Acanthophilia and Scullies and a lot of those kind of deeper down corals. They burn up if you give them too much light. Even mushrooms, like my interstellar discosomas in my 24-gallon, they're little tiny things because they're getting pounded by light. But in my 210, they're huge. Like they're like 5 times bigger in the 210. And it's just a lighting difference. The ones in the 24-gallon have been there longer than the ones in the 210. And they're all from the same original coral. So let me back up. I got the original one from Worldwide Corals. I put it in my 24-gallon. It grew out, so I fragged a piece off, put in the 210. So it's all a piece of that original one. But if you look at the older ones, they're tiny. They're so bright and they're so gorgeous, but they're tiny because they're in high light. In the 210, they're not as bright, but they're massive. And they're getting those big bounce vesicles. They look so cool. So the corals react differently based on the light. So if you want your discosoma mushrooms to really get big and fat, turn the light down. Conversely, you want to get a real thick mat of zoanthids. Zoanthids love light. Most soft coral actually loves light. And, mushrooms we think of as a low to medium light coral, but that's not 100% true. For quite some time, I thought those Vietnam Yumas were like a coral that were just impossible to keep. People buy them, put them in their tank, wither and die, like consistently. It was one of those corals that kind of had a reputation like Goniopora. It just withered and died. It was a terrible coral. It was beautiful, but it died. Turns out the trick with those Vietnam Yumas is it needs high light and high flow. Like these corals want to be in an acro tank. They want to be up top. They want to be in the flow. They want to be in the light. They love acro tanks. So it's weird, but the best place to put that big rock is with your acros. Now, acros are a cool coral because you can acclimate them to super high light. They'll take it, they'll grow fast, and they'll develop amazing colors. Now, I personally don't do a lot of acros because, in my opinion, to do acros right, you have to design the tank around acros, primarily run acros, and then just kind of fit everything else around what acros like. And they are amazing tanks, but it's not really my style. I love LPS, I love softies, I love SPS, but I can't designate a tank to primarily acros. You guys who do it are masters. I love what you do, but personally, I'm kind of in the middle. So I pick SPS that don't need quite so much light. And, if you turn that top bit of light down so that you can grow, Monties and stuff, I'm still real bright in my tank. I mean, I'm just talking not frying everything light that you can adjust acros to. So Monties do pretty good up top. And then as we get a little lower, we go into the LPS and the softies. But really with my tank, or any softies, they'll take acro lighting, at least most of them. Sinularias, toadstools, Nepthias, all of those. And those guys, you adapt them to bright light and they will do fantastic. So lighting is the craziest subject in this hobby for the simple reason that there are so many different ways to do it and there's not a right answer. Like every coral is going to want its own lighting. And your lighting is going to change the color of the coral. And if you try to adjust your lighting to change the color of a single coral, there's a good chance you're going to change the lighting of a coral around it. In fact, I've had huge changes from moving a coral an inch over. I have a blue Monipora with like purple polyps. It used to be super pink with purple polyps. But when I moved it just right under the center bracing. Visually, it's not that much difference in lighting. That coral completely changed colors. Like you wouldn't think it's the same color or the same coral by the amount it changed colors, but it did. Same lights, nothing changed except I moved it an inch over. That's it. So lighting on a reef tank is the craziest thing because you have all of these technologies working with biological organisms in a reef aquarium with changing parameters like water quality and all of that. And then corals, every coral is different. They vary within species. So it ges crazy. So is there an ultimate lighting system? Absolutely not. What I will say about lighting that I think is the best advice you can possibly get, it's don't overlight it unless you're trying to get acros. Like you're more likely to have problems with too much light than not enough. And if you're running into problems with not enough, try it in a spotlight or something like that. Try to get the light to where you need it. So we're about 25 minutes into this. I think it's time we go up and look at some of the comments. So now's a great time. If you've got questions, put them in the comments column. We'll go through, we'll answer until basically there's nothing left. So what's your thought on 165 watt black box? So these are those kind of cheap Chinese black box lights. I've never used them personally. My understanding is they've used some cheaper blue LEDs, so you don't quite get the spectrum off of it. And, you know, BRS did a video a few years ago where they kind of looked at the electronics on them. They weren't dangerous. They just weren't as good as some of the higher end lighting systems. So I would say any advice I'm giving you at this point is going to be secondhand. I've never personally used them. My thoughts are they're inexpensive, but you get what you pay for, right? So, you know, in the old days, I tried like the Odyssey fixtures with the metal halides and the T5s and all that kind of stuff. Garbage. They were terrible. So my guess is you're going to get what you're paid for. But if it's all you can afford and you need a light for your tank, absolutely. Tons of people have tons of success with these. Yeah, I mean, really, it's just kind of you get what you pay for. If you can afford to buy a better light, do it. But if you're on a budget and it's what you can afford, yeah, do it. I'd rather put a cheap light over my tank than get out of the hobby. Absolutely. And probably I'm being a little hard on them. Yeah, I mean, I see these things at shows, like pros use them. So they're pretty good. Oh, thank Fade to Black. Love the videos. Thank you. James Manson. Hi, everyone from the UK. Let's see if we can find some actual questions. Okay, 6,500K metal halides grow SPS. Yeah, actually, or 6,500 watt, or sorry, 6,500K metal halides are the best for growing SPS. However, they're ugly. The answer is probably true. So 6,500K is daylight. So if you were to walk out into the sunlight, that is pretty much 6,500K. I think you're actually a little bluer than true sunlight, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. In the ocean, it's pretty much what you're getting, especially near surface where a lot of those SPS live, right? So as you go down into the ocean, your if you think of the spectrum like a rainbow, it goes like red, blue, green, violet, something like that. So as you go down, your spectrum goes more and more blue. Well, right at the surface, you're getting mainly daylight. And that's what acros and montes and a lot of these near surface SPS and even soft coral are used to getting. And in the old days, people like Mike Paletta and Sanjay Yoshi, I've seen their videos talk about 6,500K metal halides growing them insanely fast. So I believe these guys 100%. And yeah, the corals probably are a little ugly. But man, if you just want to grow something and you want to mimic a natural reef, probably the way to go. All right. So Veronica, you go on a rafting trip? Okay, so the rafting trip is just something me and my kid did. It was a lot of fun. You guys know Ian. He's been on the show a few times. We're blowing up his swimming pool, and I got this kind of crazy idea where I thought I'd fill the swimming pool with air. And instead of just filling it with water directly, we have a little pond behind our house. So we took it out to the pond. I made a couple of makeshift paddles, and we paddled our little raft out into the middle of the pond. We were hanging out there for a little while. I don't know what happened, but we had like 3 little air bladders on there, and one of the things popped and it started draining. So we're like paddling to shore. There's this lady on the other side who was kind of talking to us as we were doing it. It was pretty funny, but we made it, and we went rafting in a pool today. So that was pretty cool. Then I got back, I cleaned the pool up, and I set it up for Ian. So now he's probably playing in the pool. I don't know what he's doing. He's upstairs. Let's see. Veronica. Hi from Antarctica. I know you, Veronica. You're not from Antarctica. I'm telling you. All right. Stephen Banks. Any recommendations for 60-inch long, 18-inch deep, 30-inch tall? I don't have any recommendations for that. What I will say is I absolutely love that tank. Yeah, those are great tanks. So I'm not going to recommend any specific ones. What I will say is badass tank. Love it. Reefer Madness. No mods here. I'm not sure what we're talking about modded, but that's okay. Maybe I missed something in the comments. Let's see. Robin Hood Jr. I run 16 hours of LED on softly lit tank. Everybody says I'm crazy. What do you think about that? And I keep my nitrates and phosphates stable as can be. I honestly don't think you're crazy. So first, corals need a night period. They have to rest. The worst thing you can do to a coral is to light it 24/7. Oh, ask me how I know. Because I've done it. Yeah. So I worked for a company once. I'm not going to say which. And I left for the weekend, and I must have flipped a timer or something, one of the things on the knobs on the timer. And I came back on Monday, and the light was on all weekend. I didn't kill any coral, but oh my God, those corals were pissed off. Yeah, nothing like coming back on Monday and finding your lights are still on and you got a tank full of angry coral. I mean, honestly, if I would have done that long enough, it would have killed the coral. I mean, over a weekend, it wasn't going to kill the coral, but it sure stressed them out. First thing I got to do is turn the lights off and just start getting them back into the flow. But 16 hours is probably pushing it. But I've always been kind of a 12-hour kind of lighting guy. Difference is the way I do it is I ramp the lights up and then I run them real bright for 3 or 4 hours. Then I ramp them down. So they're only getting the really bright spectrum for 4 or 5 hours out of the day. And then the rest of it's kind of lower. What I think people run into is they either run their lights all day long or they run the lights too bright too long. This is something you just have to play with. So Robin Hood Jr., I would love to know what your long-term success ends up looking like on this. But I think at 16 hours, you probably are going to be pushing the limits as to what a coral needs for a rest period. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if on a natural reef at some of the northernmost and southernmost portions of our reefs of the world, our tropical reefs, that we're not getting too far off of 16 hours of daylight. So my guess is if they can get 16 hours in nature, there's no reason they won't take it in the tank. As long as they get some time at night to rest, yeah, they're great. Okay. Oh, Fade to Black. Scott hit me up. Still down in the Springs. Yes, we need to do that. Yeah, I love the Springs. This whole COVID thing. I got so much stuff I want to do right now. I got stores I need to visit. I want to get down to Reef Builder's studio. I've got a public aquarium I want to go visit. This whole COVID thing has thrown my last 3 months off. All right, Speedy is the best light, Radion or Kessel. So first, they're different lights. Like I would not say one is better than the other. They are very different lights. Yeah, me personally, I love the Kessel setup. That dense matrix LED is perfect if you ask me. They put all of those LEDs into one tight package and the spread is amazing. When I had my old Giesemann Teslas, like you would see like individual blue lights mixed in with the white. So you'd like look in a shadow area and there'd just be this blue light sitting there, even though you got the whites on with it. You don't get that with the Kessel. You don't get that disco ball effect. I've even seen other lights where I'm like seeing reds and greens on the bottom of the tank. And it's like, no, I don't want to see this. I want it mixed properly. Now, Radion, to their credit, they do a great job with their mixing. And then they have the adapters you can put on there to help with that even more if it's a problem. And then the higher you raise the light above your tank, the better of a job they do. But from that single technology, I think Kessel's got a little bit of a lead. But I mean, if you like the Radion's controllability, I mean, and it looks really good. I've never used it, but Radion's got some pretty great controllability. They're a well-made light. They last a long time. And I mean, I cannot say they're a bad light in any possible way. There's just too much good success out there. Me personally, I like the design of the Kessels, just that dense matrix LED, and then the new A9s look pretty sweet. But I think Kessel is catching up to Ecotech on their controllability. And Radion, I thought was slowing down, and then they came out with their new Gen 5 blues, which is brilliant. So what they did was they put more blue LEDs in the light, because really everybody was cranking their blues up, not running a lot of whites. So a lot of the bulbs inside that light was going to waste. So by putting more blues, you're running more light in the spectrum you actually want. So yeah, I'm real torn. Like, they're both fantastic lights, and without doing a side-by-side comparison, and I hate to say it, even if I did have them side-by-side, I'm probably the guy who'd want to run both on my tank because they're so good. It's like asking me to choose between a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. I mean, I'm probably going to choose the Lamborghini just because they look awesome, but I can't actually say it's a better car. Yeah, that's kind of the best I can tell you. All right. Let's see what else we got. T5s with Kessel A360X combo. That is what I run, Fade to Black. I love it. I wonder if that's what you're running too. They are a great combo. 2020 standards are way different than when I started back in 1993. That's sure a good point. Oh my God, I was not in this in 93. I cannot imagine what reefing was like in 93. Locally, there wasn't even like much in the way of places to buy coral in Colorado in 93. So I salute you for being in the hobby that long. You are badass for sticking with it. All right. How would you Vera Spectra lights do for a 220? I'm not sure what that means. But as far as spectrum goes, I basically set it to what my eye likes and what the corals seem to be liking as well. Not a very scientific reason, and that's part of the problem people have with LEDs is they're not plug and play. That's where the T5s and metal halides really kind of have that one up. Plug, you play, you put it on your tank, and it just kind of worked. Now, you had no controllability, which is what I have gotten addicted to and why I will always have LEDs over my tank. All right, let's see what else we can find. Okay, Scott, have you ever heard from anyone what grade of photography diffusion paper is used? For example, the Ecotech lights. I have not. That's a good question, but there's plenty of photography diffusion papers out there. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about as far as diffusion papers, but I mean, I think of just kind of those like photography filter films that you'd pull out. But yeah, there's a lot out there. I don't know what Ecotech has or runs or anything like that. It's a really interesting question. I've never delved in that far into the actual lighting technology. Love the channel. Keep it up. Thank you so much. Hi, Scott. How's the tank? Tank's doing great. So yeah, I kind of showed earlier, I got glue on my hands. I have a big kind of neon green splatter hammer growing off on the left side of my tank. And, you know, I came in, I was going to film a different video other than this live stream. I know you guys are my second choice. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, I was going to film a different video, but I walked over and that thing had fallen off. So I cut that coral up, glued it back on, and really that's the only problem I'm having with the tank. Can't complain about that. Let's see. The Smungoda still won't turn green. It's pissing me off. It's probably a lighting issue. I don't know. But it's got tons of light. Spectrum should be fine. It just wants to stay brown. What are you going to do? Ooh, but about that, I forgot all about this. This is way cool. With LEDs, one thing I've started using is the red channel on my LEDs. I know, right? I don't know how many people I've heard say red's stupid. You shouldn't use the red channel on your LED. You're just going to grow algae if you use the red channel on your LED. I mean, maybe, but I'm getting some amazing coral colors. So by boosting that red up, it gives the tank a little bit of a purple look, which is cool, but not just when you run the blues does the red do something. The red is really cool for pulling the reds out of your coral. So if like my red Montiporas, you turn that red spectrum up and those corals just pop. You turn it too much and your tank turns pink and it looks stupid. So there's a little adjustment. But the red light is something I really never used, but now that I am using it, I love the red spectrum. It's something I'm kind of using with, well, I was going to say I try to hold back on it, but nah, I've gone crazy with it lately. It's fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. So let's see, what else can we find on here? Do you partake in 420? Yeah, April 20th is a fantastic holiday. I love it. All right. 6,500K is what we used to run in the late 90s. Yeah, I mean, I love this hobby because part of how all of this got going was through hobbyists. Like every bit of lighting technology we have started off in other industries and was brought over. When Reef first started, they had to find something, and Home Depot lights ended up over people's tanks. They ran 6,500K bulbs, and they got amazing results out of it. Their corals were still brown because they didn't have the blues mixed in, but wow. Rania, hi, hey Scott, what is your favorite Tang? Greetings from Belgium. Well, thank you from the United States. My favorite Tang is a purple Tang, hands down. Really, the entire Zebra Soma family is fantastic. I just love a purple Tang, that purple look with the yellow tail. It's one of those fish that I saw early on that I just couldn't afford, but they were so beautiful. I always wanted one. I've had a few over the years. So yeah, easily my favorite. Black Tangs are cool. Gem Tangs are cool. Just too expensive. Purples, and I hate to tell you guys this, the yellow Tangs and the purple Tangs, they pop more. Yeah, they really do. So kind of cool. All right, let's go down to the next question. Hi, Scott. May I ask a question? Why my zinnias always die? Other coral as well. The water parameter is perfect or is okay. Really weird. So if it was just zinnia, I would say that for whatever reason, zinnia don't like your tank. But when you say other corals die as well, it makes me think something's wrong with your tank. You say your water parameters are good. I'm not 100% sure what that means or what other corals are dying. So it's hard to say. What I will say is my own personal experience when I had corals dying and I couldn't figure out what it was, it ended up being bad testing equipment. So my personal problem ended up being that I had a bad hydrometer. So I was getting a reading of 1.026 when in reality it was 1.031. So my coral would wither and die, zinnia included. So if your parameters really are good, your lighting is good, everything is good, I would go to a reef store and have them verify those samples just in case, because who knows what could be going on right now. But yeah, if you type more down there, I will try to answer it when we get to it. But without a little more information, it's hard to know. But I'm a big fan of double checking the tests. What light do you feel zoas do best in? Zoas don't seem to care as much about spectrum as some corals. But, you know, I always run it bluish because it makes the fluorescence pop. And then I like a bright light for zoas. The thing I've noticed with zoas is a lower light, you'll get those longer stalks in the big fat heads on them. You run higher light, they're much shorter, and you'll get smaller heads, and you'll get a lot more of them in that space. So I can't really say that one's healthier than the other, but if you're looking to propagate or just you like the look, personally, I kind of like that shorter look better. So I really feel like they just do better in lower light. But yeah, they'll thrive under quite a few different conditions, but bluer spectrum, lots of light. Kessel's T5s, LEDs, Radions, they're going to thrive under about anything. Let's see what's next. Yeah, this is great content watching me read. Lord B. Mills. I'm sure I said that completely wrong. I know this is not on the light subject, but do you still have 8 tangs? I do not have 8 tangs. There are 5 upstairs in the 210 and 1 in the 24 gallon. So 24 gallons is normally too small for a tang, but I've got a little tiny Scopus in there, so he'll be good till I need to upgrade. And then the other 5, so I know you guys, hopefully you guys follow my channel. You know my tank crashed about a year and a half ago or so. When that happened, I lost some of my tangs. So I'm playing it safe. I'm done like trying to stuff too many tangs in my tank. I'm doing 1 tang per genus. I've really got 5 genuses that are commonly available in the aquarium hobby. So that's what I'm sticking with. It's so much more peaceful. It's so much easier to handle. I'm just so much happier with 5 rather than 8. 8 was amazing. It was a challenge. I'm glad I did it. But for now, 5 is the right answer for me. Let's see. I got a VeraSpectra 300 watt as my first light, only because of the spread. Found out that after a year that I was cooking my corals at 10%. Now I run them at 1% and 2% blue, and it's doing me well. Wow, those are some crazy bright lights if you are running that high of par. I mean, at 1 or 2% to run your tanks, like it almost sucks because you have no controllability. I would love to see what a light like that would do over a big tank, like a big 2,000 gallon tanks where you could really pound some with light. That would be way cool. Michael Harvey. Hey, Scott, where do you see your tank in a few years? New tank, rescape, or current tank? I am a big fan of a grown out reef. There's a couple ways to do this hobby. You can be a coral collector. You can do, so you know, they'll end up with a tank full of little frags all over. Me, I like my reef to look like a reef. I feel like I am more of an ecosystem keeper than I am a coral collector. I want my tank to look like a reef. So my goal is to keep this tank running and growing for as long as possible. I'm sure I'll have to trim it, and it's going to be like a garden. It's not going to be like a real reef where it runs rampant, because the reality is, given enough time, one of the monis will probably just take over. But yeah, I'll just keep it trimmed back and try to keep the pests out. I'd love to get rid of those flatworms. Really, those flatworms are the biggest reason I would consider a rescape. I could dip everything, and then I could hit it with flatworm X. I've got too many in there right now to want to risk it with flatworm X. They bug me, but not enough to tear my tank down. And like I said, to me, it's more of an ecosystem. They're part of it. I didn't want them in there, but hey, they're there. They, I guess, do a job. I don't know what it would be. All right, let's do another one. Aaron Walter. Hi, Scott. I would really like a blue Tang, a yellow Tang, and a purple Tang in my 120-gallon reef. Is this a good idea? And have you got any tips for caring for these fish? Also, a 5-foot 120. Okay, so the good news is you got the 5-foot 120. I like that way better than the 4-foot. But what you're talking about is exactly what I had. I had a blue Tang, a yellow Tang, and a purple Tang. They did fine for about a year. Then one day, the yellow Tang snapped and tried to kill my purple Tang. That sucked. I ended up having to pull the yellow Tang out. I put him in quarantine for I don't know, it was like a year. It's a long time. I put him in there until I started adding more Tangs to the tank. Unfortunately, what you're trying to do is going to be a struggle. And the reason is you're going to try to put 2 zebrasomas together. It can be done. It can go well, but it's going to be a struggle. I would highly recommend a blue Tang, a zebrasoma, whether it's the yellow or a purple, and then a different fish. I like a Tumini or a yellow eye coal Tang, something like that. Different genus completely, though. Might even be good with a powder blue. I would rather have a powder blue, a blue, and a yellow than the other way around. I just had bad luck with it. It's not that it can't be done. I made it work for like a year, but you're going to be better off switching those genuses up. Or if you want to do the zebrasoma thing, I would run like 5, which is really going to be pushing it in a 120-gallon tank. So it depends on how much risk you're willing to take and how hard you want to push things. But personally, I would avoid that combo based on my own experience. Providence Tidal Reef at Mile High Reavers. Hey man, how's the tank? I hope to see another episode soon. We just talked about this a couple minutes ago, so thanks for joining us. Tank is thriving. I was just talking about how I was getting ready to make another episode before this, but Tank's doing really good. I've got a little algae still down here in the sump. Maybe I should try dosing something. We'll see. But for now, Tank's doing really good. 24 gallons, killing it. No problems at all. The new lighting system is working out great. It's going exactly like I wanted. It's super easy and super great. I'm loving it. Karen Nation, looking into a hybrid LED T5. I live in Florida. Do they produce too much heat? I do not run a heater. Spring through fall, maintain about 78 degrees with LEDs. That is, in my opinion, no. You're going to have a hood on it. You might want some ventings or some fans to get the air out of the hood. Otherwise, you're probably going to be fine, especially if you're in an air-conditioned house like that. But in my system, I'm in an air conditioning house. I have the venting from the hood, and the hybrid T5 LED thing never produced too much heat. Even with the halides on there, it doesn't produce too much heat for the tank itself. It's only a problem because of that hood. So really what happens is if you put that hood on there, it traps the heat, and that really heats your water. If you don't have a hood, the heat can escape, it rises, and it doesn't have as big of an effect on the tank's temperature as you might think. So I think you can do okay. Scott, your thoughts on Borbonius anthias? I think they're really cool. I think they're kind of expensive and relatively difficult to keep. You're probably looking at multiple feeding. It's not something I've personally kept, but it's a beautiful fish. And research it, and you can probably be successful. It's something I wouldn't buy unless you're either rich or experienced. But yeah, I mean, if you've got the money to get some and do it, I mean, like, why not? It's a pretty common fish. People keep them successfully. So I think if you're willing to do the research and do what it takes to keep this fish, it's completely doable and a beautiful fish that would really add a lot to your reef tank. All right, Freeman Aquatics. And make it worse, it's a 30-gallon long. It's a foot above the tank, and I really think I should raise the light and just get, I think I'm missing half of this conversation. I'm sorry about that. Thank you for this talk, Scott. Yeah, sorry I missed half your conversation there. I apologize. Okay, Michael Harvey, do you think you are over 500 par at the top of your tank with the light you have? Probably directly under the metal halide. I am pushing it. I would not be surprised by that. But I don't have a par meter, so I have no idea. All right, guys. Well, it's been almost an hour. It's about double my normal time. I feel like I've done a good job answering questions. So thank you to everybody who showed up. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the questions. And until next time, I'll see you on Mile High Reefers. Like, comment, and subscribe.